A man caught a rare red goldfish. He was about to release it into the river. Just then the goldfish suddenly spoke, asking the man for help. It wanted him to take it home and keep it as a pet. Otherwise, the big fish in the river would eat it. The man looked around in disbelief, making sure he wasn't dreaming. He agreed to protect the little fish and took it home. He put it in a large bowl to keep it safe, but not long after. When the man was about to eat, the little fish suddenly cried out for help, constantly saying it couldn't breathe and needed more space. The man stood up to check and was completely stunned. In just a few minutes, the little goldfish had grown much larger. He hurriedly picked up the bowl and poured the fish into the water tank. The next morning, the man was awakened by cries for help again. He followed the sound and was startled. The tiny fish from yesterday had grown so large it filled the entire tank. He quickly carried the goldfish to the pond outside. Just then, a group of people passed by his house and marveled at how large the fish had become, enough for them to eat for a month. The man told them it was a magical fish that could speak. Yesterday, it was just a thumb-sized fry, but had grown so large overnight. The villagers thought the man was exaggerating, so they asked the goldfish to speak to prove it. But the goldfish ignored them and continued playing. Seeing this, the villagers thought the man was playing a trick on them, and they were about to kill the fish and eat it. The man hurriedly stopped them. He turned to persuade the goldfish to speak. The goldfish remained silent. The villagers felt their intelligence had been insulted. They all went to beat up the lying man. While beating him, they said the country is ashamed of him. After venting their anger, the villagers left. The man did not get angry for being beaten, because for him being beaten was already a common occurrence. It turned out that he had once been the king of this country, Manu. Now the country was in a dark era of strife. The government was weak and deceit was everywhere. King Manu wanted to awaken humanity, so he followed the government's rules and willingly gave up his throne. He took his wife and went on a long journey of hardship and training. There were too many people he had punished in the past. When they found out he was no longer king, they came to seek revenge. So Manu was beaten up every few days. Such a country and era were bound to face destruction. One day Manu went to the riverbank to pray to the guardian deity Vishnu. Vishnu decided to test him. He transformed into a small goldfish. This led to the scene at the beginning where Manu brought the goldfish home. After being beaten, Manu blamed the goldfish for being unfaithful and made him take the blame, making others think he was bragging. The goldfish, however, spoke a series of philosophical truths. What most people see is not necessarily the truth. The root of the problem lies not in whether others believe you, but in whether you believe in yourself. Upon hearing the goldfish's profound words, Manu realized he was no ordinary fish. Sure enough, after chatting for a while, the goldfish grew again and the pond could no longer contain him. The goldfish asked Manu to take him to the sea. Manu, despite his own injuries, gave it his all, pulling the goldfish to the sea on a flatbed cart. He overcame countless obstacles, and when he released the goldfish into the sea, it grew larger and larger, constantly swaying its tail on the surface and glowing all over, so bright that Manu couldn't keep his eyes open. The next moment, it transformed into the form of Vishnu. He declared that Manu had completed his trial. At the same time, he instructed Manu to build an ark, which must carry a pair of every species of animal, as well as collect seeds of all plants. This was because the apocalyptic dance of Shiva the Tandava was about to begin, which would trigger a great flood to submerge everything. At that time, Manu and his wife could board the ark along with the 7 sages. The golden fish would take them to a new place, to start anew. After saying all this, Vishnu disappeared, leaving Manu with a magical conch shell. With time running out and the task at hand so daunting, Manu dared not rest for a moment. He and his wife worked day and night. But even if they gave their all, they could not possibly finish in time. A few days later, he remembered Vishnu's conch shell. He blew the conch shell to send out a distress signal. As the sound of the conch shell echoed, creatures from all over the natural world came to help. Elephants not only helped them cut down trees, but also used their trunks to carry firewood. Rhinoceroses continuously charged at the trees. Even deer became porters, each used their unique abilities to assist. Indeed, with so many animals, their strength was immense. In less than a week, the makeshift ark was completed. However, although they had built the ark and had a large goldfish as an engine, they still needed something to use as a tow rope. Just as they were at a loss, the sky suddenly darkened, and it seemed as though the end of the world was approaching. This was because Shiva, the god of destruction, had begun to dance. His Tandava would trigger a great flood to submerge everything in the world. Facing the helpless Manu couple, Vishnu, in the form of a young man, gave him a plan. He told Manu to go to a nearby cave to find the answer. There lived a 1,000-year-old serpent perfect for a tow rope. Manu was truly brave. Without hesitation, he followed the young man to the cave. When they arrived at the cave entrance, the young man refused to go in, fearing the serpent would swallow him whole. Manu had no choice but to enter alone. He steeled himself and walked into the cave. Inside were nothing but bones. Manu made a torch and began to rub it to start fire. What he didn't know was that a giant serpent was slowly approaching him. The serpent said, "Shiva intends to destroy the world. How dare I interfere?" Manu hurriedly said, "This is the will of Lord Vishnu." After all, the great serpent Shisha was Vishnu's mount. That's a good reason. The great serpent said, "I will definitely help you, but I have no strength left. I am hungry." Manu immediately understood what it meant. It was asking him to be its meal. However, in order to ask Shisha for help, Manu resolutely decided to sacrifice himself. The next moment, the great serpent swallowed him whole. At the same time, the destroyer god Shiva began to dance the Tandava dance of destruction. The sea began to churn, and the animals became restless. Manu's wife and the 7 sages were still anxiously waiting for Manu. The ground beneath their feet began to crack. Suddenly, a giant serpent emerged. With its gaping maw, it was none other than Shisha. Its form truly lived up to its reputation as the ruler of the serpent realm. Manu's wife, seeing that her husband had not returned, clasped her hands together and asked where her husband was. Shisha truthfully replied that Manu had become his meal in order to ask for his help. Upon hearing this, his wife looked utterly despairing and asked the serpent to eat her as well. "Get some vitamins so you'll have the strength to work later." The giant snake then opened its mouth and spat out a round ball of light. It turned out to be Manu who had been released. "I'm not here to eat you. I'm here to protect you, because the path back is dangerous." After that, the giant snake transformed into 5 large heads, returning to its original form as Shisha. Once everything was ready, they boarded the ship and prepared to set sail. Unexpectedly, the wind and waves were too fierce, directly knocking them into the sea. But the next moment, the giant goldfish pulled the ship back out. Thus, they used the giant fish as an engine and Shisha as a tow rope, beginning their long escape across the sea. And everything in the world would be submerged by the sea. As Shiva finished dancing the Tandava and opened his third eye, the sea collapsed houses and flooded palaces. Only a small boat remained on the vast sea. But what awaited them was not only the wind and waves, but also the watchful eyes of the Asuras. The gods were playing a game. When they were in a good mood, they created the world. When they were bored, they destroyed everything. The Asura king was preparing to eliminate Manu and his wife. Then there would be no more humans in the world. So he sent 2 capable generals, Motu and Gaidaba, who carried large iron hammers onto the ark. Without a word, they attacked. Just as they were about to send Manu to his death, they were repelled by a golden light 18 meters away. It was Vishnu who had appeared to protect them. The 2 Asuras, seeing Vishnu had arrived, they showed no fear and even had the nerve to ask him for a gift. It turned out that these 2 were Vishnu's sons. Years ago, Vishnu was meditating in the milk ocean. His wife Lakshmi tried to wake him up by tickling him with a peacock feather. Unbeknownst to her, 2 earwax particles were dislodged. These particles instantly transformed into human form. Since they were born from filth, their nature was inherently impure. They caused chaos everywhere, enraging their mistress Lakshmi. Lakshmi, furious, banished them. From then on, the 2 became Asuras, facing their father Vishnu. The elder brother greeted him and sought his blessings, while the younger brother sneaked up from behind for a surprise attack. However, when the giant hammer struck Vishnu, Vishnu remained unmoved and repelled the younger brother 18 meters away. Realizing they could not defeat Vishnu, the 2 brothers shot into the sky like rockets, reaching the clouds, where they began to run slowly, performing a duet. As they spun faster and faster, a tornado began to form over the sea. It threatened to sweep the large ship into the sea in an instant. Vishnu sent out his cutting machine blades, directly severing the tornado. The earwax brothers, enraged, charged toward Vishnu. Before they could approach the large ship, they were struck by Vishnu's massive iron pestle, sending them flying into outer space and landing on Saturn. Vishnu followed closely behind with a flash of movement. He flew out his cutting machine blade again and severed the 2 brothers at the waist. However, they had been blessed by their Aunt Sakti, allowing them to choose death voluntarily. In other words, no one could kill them. Thus, they were beaten by their father Vishnu for 80,000 rounds, chased from one planet to another. And after a month of relentless combat, they finally grew tired. They agreed to a ceasefire and decided to sleep. The next moment, Vishnu used a lotus flower as a bed and fell asleep. The earwax brothers saw their father asleep and prepared to launch a surprise attack to strangle him. Just as they were about to act, they were stopped by an incredibly beautiful woman. Both of them were instantly captivated by her beauty and wanted to marry her and have children. But there was only one beauty, and neither wanted to be left alone. They nearly came to blows in their rush to claim her. Their commotion woke Vishnu. Vishnu began to manipulate his two foolish sons. To marry the beauty, they must be willing to go through fire and water for her. He asked them who was willing, and both eagerly agreed. The next moment, they began a rapid-fire question-and-answer game. Would you build the largest palace in the world for her? Of course we would. Would you give her all the wealth in the world? Without a doubt. We were willing to do anything to get her. If she were to kill you at my hands, would you accept it? We accept it. We would willingly accept death to obtain her. The brothers realized it was too late. The beautiful woman had transformed into the form of the goddess Shakti. The two brothers had their immortality blessing broken. They charged at Vishnu again, but were knocked down by the great iron hammer. This time, they began to bleed. That meant they could be killed. The earwax brothers fled in terror. They returned to the great ship to deal with the demon couple. Just as they were about to act, Vishnu followed them. He slaughtered them with a cutting machine blade. Everything began to calm down, and the great destruction ended. Life on the Ark once again welcomed light. But then they encountered a new problem, although they were about to reach the new continent. The water was getting shallower, and the giant goldfish could no longer move forward. Its body collided with the rocks in the water, struggling painfully in place. To help her husband, who had turned into a big goldfish, escape, Lakshmi directly transformed into the form of water, transforming into the Ganges River, flowing from afar into the sea. As the water level rose, the large goldfish could finally swim freely and continued to drag the large ship to the shore. It then vanished. The Manu couple and the 7 sages successfully escaped this crisis, stepped onto the new continent, and began a new life. Vishnu brought the goddess of good fortune to bless them, wishing their new life to be filled with happiness. May your lives also be filled with happiness. Today's story ends here. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe.